All right, what about an X or an O? Very similar idea. If board row column is an X move, we're going to add on to output an X in the tab. Same thing with O. I should put in the if statement there. There we go. Else if board X row column is an X move. And finally, if board row column is an O move, output is going to be O in a tab. So I start with my output with whatever's on the front of this thing. I walk through each of the columns and add in whatever's supposed to be there, and then print it out when I'm all done. Now, it's going to be hard to see if X and O are working yet, so let me do something real quick where I just put in some dummy values. So board 1, 2 is now an X move, and board 0, 0 is an O move. Let's see, so 0, 1, 2. So it's row 1, and then column 2. And keep in mind that array started 0, so this is actually row 2, column 3, if you think of it that way. So second row, third column, that's an X, good. And then 0, 0 is going to be an O move, the upper left. Cool, so that's working. Now, I'm just putting A on the front of these. I'd actually like to make it not just A, but actually whatever the, so this should be A, this should be B, this should be C. I could manually do 3 if statements, but there's actually a clever way to use chars to deal with this. What I'm going to do is take the character A and add on whatever row is. So if row is 0, it leaves it as the letter A. If I add 1 the next time down, then the letter A becomes the letter B. It's the next thing down on the ASCII chart. And then C. Now, if I just run it this way, it's going to think, hey, those are numbers. And I'm like, no, 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 this needs to be letters. So I'm going to change it back to a char after I add that on. ABC. All right, so that's how print board works. What about actually playing a move? So now I want to actually read in a move. So I'm going to create something out here, which I'm going to call a scanner. So a scanner reads in from some sort of input. It could be a file, it could be system in. We use that a little bit in counting problems. I need to import that because that's in Java util. And I'm going to have a string input that I'm going to define out here. And actually, why don't I set that to just the empty string for now. Notice the empty string is not the same as a blank. This is a string with no characters in it, as opposed to a blank, which is that. All right, so after we print the board, we should probably have it read in a move and then set that in the board. So scanner is a new scanner, and it's reading in from system.in in our case. So now I'd like to take one line of input. Input equals scanner.next line. So now input has whatever somebody typed down here. This time I'm going to be a little bit more careful about the input. I'd like to make sure that they don't put in George and then I try and change that into letters and numbers and it dies. So I'm going to make sure that the thing they typed in is exactly 2 letters. So an A and a 1, for example. So it's, if they put in like A, then it's going to not accept it, but it won't break the program. So I can actually check the input of a input's length by actually saying if input.length is exactly 2. Now, I actually am going to basically check for a number of things all in a row, and if any of them are not the case, then I'm going to check to see if the length is 2. I'm going to check the first letters A, B, or C, check if the column is 1, 2, or 3. So I want to say if this is not 2, then I'm just going to output, hey, why don't you try again? So enter a letter followed by a number. The idea with programming is that ideally you want to make sure that it never breaks, and so this is our attempt at doing that. Now what happens if they put in D1? That's a problem still. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check each of the individual letters at the beginning of the input, and if it's an A or a B or a C, then I'm good. So if input dot charat 0, which is the first thing, is not equal to an A, and, which is 2 ampersands, it's on the 7 on most keyboards, input.charat 0 is not equal to a B, and let's go ahead and put these on all on the same line just so it's a little more visible. Input.charat 0 is not equal to a C. If all three of those is the case, then you didn't enter A, B, or C. You entered in something else, which is not acceptable. So system.out.println. So row must be an A, B, or C. All right, so that takes care of that. I want something similar for 1, 2, and 3, so I'm just going to copy this and change it to be character 1, which is the second thing they enter. Must be a 1, 2, or 3. And if they don't do that, then I'm just going to say, hey, column must be a 1, 2, or 3. If we get through all of those and everything is kosher, then we know that we actually have clean input. First thing is an A, B, or C. Next thing is a 1, 2, or 3. So let's try doing some faulty stuff real quick. So I say, George, enter a letter followed by a number. Good. Now I'm only doing this loop once. Notice it terminated here. Let me actually put in a while loop that goes through this over and over again. For now, I'm just going to put in a infinite loop. So that means I need to actually terminate it myself every time. So all of this is going to be in while true. Eventually, this is going to be while we still are playing the game. So let's say I say, so George, enter in a letter followed by a number. Let's see, let's say D4. Row must be A, B, or C. Okay, what about A4? Column must be 1, 2, or 3. A1, and it's fine. Good. So I need to hit this to stop it, or else I'm going to be running multiple things at the same time. The other thing I should do is I should print the board here inside of this, so it happens over and over again. All right, next. Now I need to convert A, B, or C into 0, 1, or 2 for this first dimension of my board. What I can do is I can create an int row, make that equal to the char at 0, and subtract the letter A. Tricky stuff. In column, the char at 1 is actually the letter 1. Keep in mind it's still a string, so I have to convert it. I'm subtract off 1. And so just to make sure these are right, I'm going to print out row, comma, column, just to make sure that the things entered in are right. So if I say A1, that's 0, 0. Good. If I say C3, 2, 2, C1, 2, 0. All right, let me stop that. Also, I noticed that I accidentally didn't terminate this one, so let me stop that. So if you go over to this little console down thing, it'll show you all the things that are currently running. Make sure you don't have tons of those, or else eventually your computer will stop running. Okay, so now that I have this row column, now let me actually play it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to play in that board row column. So for now, board row Let me just make it an X move for now and see how that goes. A1. Cool. A2. C1. All right, it looks like it's working.